Oh, wait, so is it just us?
It looks like it. So yeah, we've had a lot of people that have run in sick today or got birthdays or other things like that. Other people might join us. I haven't. Two people said that they were going to come, but they haven't yet. So we'll see what's happening. But welcome. We're starting on the next chapter of Think and Grow Rich. And the next chapter of Think and Grow Rich is all about persistence, which is an interesting chapter because what's happened to everybody about where's all their persistence? And when I started this project, I was wondering if we were going to get a situation where people didn't persist all the way through. And we can see that tonight. Well, it's right now just the three of us, but we'll see other people might join us. Okay, so it's an interesting chapter. He talks about people with persistence being branded as cold-blooded and ruthless. He says the lack of persistence is the major cause of failure. Poverty is attracted to the person's mind who is favorable to it, one that lacks persistence. He talks about how to cultivate persistence because it's a state of mind. He talks about the 16 symptoms of the lack of persistence. Fear of criticism and how this affects persistence. He talks about the 4 steps to develop persistence. He talks about the magical power of persistence. And then the 2 examples he uses is Wallace Simpson, who won the heart of the King of England, and he succeeded his crown for that. And the second one was the last great prophet, and that was about Muhammad. So we'll start, basically the chapter starts by saying persistence is an essential factor in the procedure of transmuting desire into its monetary equivalent. The basis of this persistence is the power of will. So willpower and desire make an irresistible pair. Men and women who accumulate great fortunes are generally known as cold-blooded and sometimes ruthless. What they have is willpower mixed with persistence that back their desires to ensure the attainment of their objective. He uses Henry Ford as an example. So do you think that it's a fair assessment to call people who have persistence ruthless and cold-blooded? I'll start with you, Gregory. Oh,
sorry.
Adrian, you can start.
Go ahead, Adrian.
I think it's very common for people to be described as cold-hearted and ruthless when they're being persistent. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think
and why?
Why?
Yeah.
Because it look, if you're very honest, you look at someone like Trump or any other, like a real dictator somewhere that uses a gun to control their population, or someone in the public eye like a superstar. It's very easy to achieve everything you want if you block everything and everyone out who is in the way and not have a responsibility to listen or care for what they might be trying to achieve, because that slows you down. So you can look at people who get to the top that actually are very cold-blooded and heartless, but at the same time they're being very persistent. So you've got the same traits, and you can see that even on the simple thing of a parent, and that can be a man or a woman that is the breadwinner for their family, can be seen as cold-hearted or ruthless in terms of what time they spend with their family and what they spend doing their job or their work. They, because they're thinking of the long term, so they're putting it in, giving all their energy until they're exhausted and then doing it all again, but because they love it, might be construed as being heartless. Same people and that work might look a lot like a hobby. So they might be a woodworker, they might be, they might be a potter or something. They might be a writer or a painter or a stockbroker. But if they're putting all they've got into that, then yes, of course, they're neglecting time with other people in their lives. Could be colleagues, could be family, could be the general public, could be their neighbors, anything, whatever's their circle.
I
Uh,
agree with that. I agree with that. I agree that it's you know, the person may or may not actually be cold blooded, but it can be perceived that they're cold blooded by people who maybe don't have the same drive, because that individual knows what they're after and they know what they got to do to achieve that. But others may look at that and think that, perceive them as cold blooded. Whether they are or not, they can be. They don't have to be, but it can be perceived as that easily. I agree 100%.
Oh, yes. And someone once told me, and I think this is given knowledge, that perception is reality for people, and you can't change that. It's a shame we don't have our normal ladies here, because they also suffer this feeling of being considered cold hearted or ruthless in going back to work or having a job when people think they should be mothering the children they've got at home. So and it's the same for fathers. It's the same for brothers and sisters, daughters and sons, husbands and wives. It's, quite often you don't have two people or a whole family in on the same goal. I do a lot of study into business families, like family business. You look at the big family businesses like the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers. Then you look all across the developing world, Asia, Africa, Middle East, Europe as well, where you have family businesses. And then you look around you at how many people try to have a company with their wife or their children, their adult children, and whether it works or not, or brothers or sisters starting a company together. Very difficult to get people on the same page sometimes, to have that amount of focus, and it gets misconstrued as neglect.
yeah, look, I think you're both right in that. And when you're talking about brothers and sisters or husbands and wives, it's you're right. It's hard to get two people on the same page. Uh, um, it's actually very hard because everybody's got their own way of doing things. And so, yeah, you mentioned Trump, and Trump's a classic example of persistence. He's certainly done some interesting things. He became the president of the United States, so it does take persistence to do that. And right now I watch Formula One, and we're watching a scenario play out where there's this American team, um, uh, Andretti, which is a famous name, who's trying desperately to get into Formula One. And it's just all about persistence. He's been trying for years and years. And he's finally got Ford and Cadillac to come on board and to be the sponsor of the car, but still he's not guaranteed to get into the grid. So persistence is definitely something you need in order to achieve any goal you want in your life. All right, so he goes on to say that the lack of persistence is one of the major causes of failure. Lack of persistence is a weakness to the majority of men. It may be overcome by effort. This depends entirely upon the intensity of one's desire. Desire is the starting point. If desire is weak, build a stronger desire. And he uses the example of fire. You get the twigs, and one twig's not going to create much of a flame. But if you've got, if you build up a few logs, you're going to have a strong fire and a strong flame. So it's pretty self-explanatory that you need persistence and and this desire. But for people that are lacking this persistence, have you got any suggestions? Hi, Anna.
Hi,
Good to
guys.
see you again. Hi. We talk about persistence. So, what I was just going to say is, people that lack persistence generally fail. And so the question is, if you're lacking persistence, what suggestions can you suggest to help people to build up that persistence? Adrian.
I would have to say my mother helped me persistently study, like through senior high school and university. And I think the best thing to do when you're having trouble persisting is to take a short break, but a short break with purpose, which is to recalibrate and attack it with a different mental state or from a different angle. Like I've said before, sometimes you've got to add something, sometimes you've got to take away something. What do you think, Gregory?
I think what he mentioned about weak desire, and in your case with the study, it probably, I'm guessing, was something that you weren't like a deep down desire that you wanted to learn it, like when I was in school. I think that those are the things where you have to develop persistence, and you have to actually apply discipline to being persistent. um, I believe if it's a deep down embedded desire or something that you truly love and it's just a part of you, I don't think you have to develop persistence for that. I think it's as natural as breathing. Like when you mentioned Trump, he's he believes himself. He has a self image of a winner, so he wins almost everything that he does because of that self image. And I think I think Napoleon Hill touches on it, but when he talks about having a strong desire and having persistence and having to develop persistence, I think when you have to develop persistence for something, it's because you don't have that self image of already being that. You don't have that strong, deeply down, burning desire for it. So you actually have to make yourself do it. But I think if it's a real, true, burning desire, your true purpose in life, and what something you just can't stop thinking about that you're obsessed with, I really don't think you have to develop persistence. I think it comes naturally. That's my feelings about it.
I agree. I mean, at times where you might face an obstacle, so you might fail a test, or you might get a bad mark on an assignment or an essay, or you just might be overwhelmed with how much you have in front of you, or not know what to write down on something. It happens from time to time. I say we get better and better at it as we get older. Um, I think my ability to do exams got really, really sharpened. Like, I think 5 years ago, I did a marine radio exam for the Coast Guard in North Queensland, which is different to the Coast Guard in America, Gregory. It's not part of the armed forces. The Coast Guard in Australia is volunteer, and we're not attached to the military. It's purely civilian. But sitting down and doing the theory test for this marine radio, I finished the exam in half the time of the other people and the allotted time. So obviously, I'd learned how to do it. I'd learned how to study what was going to be relevant and sit down and go through the test and complete it. And the instructor could not believe, like, no one had ever finished it in half the time. So I did something right. And let's hope at like 48 years of age, you do know what you're doing because you don't have much time to practice after that.
Well, I hope you got 100% as well.
I did.
And
I got the certificate and everything, but the greatest thing is that I learned, I had learned a lot of things about doing exams and learning, and persistence is a big thing with people. And we're glad you're here, Anna, because, persistence, you have had to persist a lot recently with things. And we already had a conversation a couple of weeks ago about, what's the balance between when you should think that you should move on to a different thing. When should you stop persisting?
I don't think, I've actually just Googled, like it's in Paul, you said how to develop persistence, right? That was your question, wasn't it? Is that what you asked,
Um,
Paul?
it's not so
Yes,
much how much
yes.
to develop it, because he does go through that in the book. But what suggestions, like I love the suggestion that Adrian said, a lot of rich men, or I heard this once ago, he was talking about short breaks. If you have a look at millionaires, they will work really, really hard for 4 weeks and then spend a week on their super yacht or do something like that. So having a break is a very important thing in order to keep that persistence, because you need to have a little bit of the break. But the question really is, now, if you're lacking in desire, what do you think you can do to build up that desire, Anna?
If you're lacking a desire in doing
Yeah,
something, then
yeah.
that's not your thing. You don't do it. You don't. Like, if why would you do something what you don't desire? Or why would you try to artificially ignite a desire of something what's not even what you're not passionate about? So I'm just I have a slightly kind of different view in terms of we all we're all people, but we're all different. So I do appreciate the book, and there is a lot of wisdom in the book. But there is no one thing suits everyone. We're all different, and different people what's in the book is kind of very generic and high level way of, if you're going to become super successful or abundant in certain ways, then likelihood you had a desire and then you developed it into the plan, and likelihood. So it's not that you do all of those things to become successful. You, of course, you can, but when you're successful, your likelihood you went through those steps. So that's how I see that. It's like a cause and effect, slightly different. And also, what you've just mentioned, like the millionaires, they work hard few weeks and then have a break. That works for that particular person. It's like, for example, Margaret Thatcher. She could work for 16 hours a day. She didn't need much sleep. She had like a certain flow that worked for her. I know that it wouldn't work for me. It might if I'm in a certain state of mind, which I need to get into that state of mind. But I know what is natural for me. And I think each individual person should be responsible to understand yourself, know thyself, right? And when you truly know what works for you and you have a desire, then you utilize your knowledge for yourself to keep that flowing, because the whole idea is to be in the flow, right?
Yes, that's the ultimate aim. And then imagine you're the leader of a country, a president or a prime minister. You probably don't need much sleep because you've like kind of made it, and you
Yeah.
have that confidence and power and the authority and the resources and the opinions and the ability to do it. So why would you sleep? Like that's it. That's how you go. That's you're at the top. But and that's for some people. It might be in a company. It might be hitting a certain number of likes on a video or a photo or something they're doing. That could be their aim. But I would point out there's different levels of persistence. There is positive persistence and negative persistence. This is something I found out. Unfortunately, it was to do with my daughter when she had a brain injury, and a word I had never heard of before, which is very hard to say, persistentity, which is sometimes small kids do it, and they persistently work on something. And that's how fidget spinners came into play with kids. It's but persistency, eh, persistency. It is the most unremarkable word, but it means persistently doing one thing. They could be. It's not just like biting their nails or picking their nose or something. It's they may tear a piece of paper and keep tearing it until it's smaller and smaller, or they may color in with a crayon or a pencil and they just keep coloring in the same spot. And this is very what you could regard as negative persistence. It's the dark side of persistence. And then you've got the other positive side of persistence is more where you're talking about in the early part of the book, having faith. Faith has to be persistent. You have to have that faith and belief that you should continue. And that's what Anna's talking about. Not having persistence for something that's a duty or someone's imposed on you, for what you are choosing yourself. You're not imposing yourself. And yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. I agree with that. I didn't really answer the question earlier, I guess, but what Anna said was correct about your main drive, your main purpose. If if that's not strong, true desire, then you're on the wrong path anyway. But to answer the question, because I didn't do it earlier, as far as developing persistence, say there's a smaller portion of something that you need to do that's part of your big picture that you don't necessarily want to do, but you have to because that's what leads to what you're really after. In that case, you may have to make yourself be persistent. You may have to develop persistence. I think in that case, for me anyway, the best way to keep to develop that persistence and keep working towards that so I can get that accomplished and move on to my bigger goal would be to write down the reason why I'm doing that, why it has to be done, how it goes into my bigger picture, why it's important to me, so that I will see that constantly and remind myself that it needs to be done because it's part of what I really want. So I would have to, in my case, to develop the persistence to do something I didn't want to do, I would have to write it down so that I can have a constant reminder of why I need to do it. And as for that, for the sleep, the lack of sleep, there was a study done long ago by some, I don't know who, I saw it in a workplace many years ago, that it was proven that if you could a person rest 15 minutes of every hour through the day, they could go possibly indefinitely without a longer period of sleep. And I think people that have lives with a lot of stress doing things they don't want to do, of course, require sleep. But if you got the life that is just your every day is spent doing what you completely enjoy and love, then you probably don't have that stress level. You're probably more relaxed. And I think that may be the reason why some people can go with very short amounts of sleep, because I've heard this consistently with a lot of really top successful people. They seem to, and very intelligent, they sleep very short amount of hours, 2 or 3 hours per day. And how they do that indefinitely, I'm not sure. And I'm starting to wonder if it's because they thoroughly love and enjoy what they do every day. So they don't have the strain and stress that causes the body to require a longer period of sleep, maybe.
Yeah, no, that's an yeah.
Go ahead, Paul.
So sure, no, that's an interesting point you brought up. I just want to get back onto that negative persistence that Adrian was talking about. And he actually does talk about that in the book. And what he actually says is that poverty is attracted to one whose mind is favorable to it. Money is attracted to him whose mind has been deliberately prepared to attract it, and through the same laws. Poverty consciousness will voluntarily, the mind will voluntarily take over the mind if you allow it to do that. Poverty consciousness without conscious application, money consciousness must be created. So I suppose if we have a look at the poverty and money creation, has anybody actually achieved their money goals in this group? And if not, why not? Anna.
You have certain targets, right? The targets are not set for life. So you move, the targets move. Like if we, like what goals are we talking? The all life goal, or like, or the next
the monetary goal, like
yeah, but the monetary goal is not one for life. Like, do you have one for life goal? Like, I want $1 billion and that's it. And after 1 billion, I'm gonna go and do something absolutely different. Then, I don't know. Is it? Like,
well, I suppose at people's position in life now, I thought I'd have made more money than I had. Now, is it because of lack of persistence or something like that? Yeah.
It's vice versa. You could have less money than you have now, and it shows that you had quite considerable persistence, right? How do you see it? Sorry.
I tell you, it's really good having you back, Anna, because you add a really great dynamic to this.
I just absolutely do.
I know that I have like a bit of over flexibility in the way how I look at things, and it helps me also as well, because when you're saying if you haven't achieved the goal, why you haven't achieved that? Because my goal is 5 years from when I started it, and I'm still not at the end of 5 years. So, like, okay, I could have done it quicker. Maybe I'll do it a little bit longer. Whether it's because of the persistence or whether because it's probably not the only goal, because like you don't want just money, you want encompassing wealth, in terms of you want the balance, you want the friendship and family and everything. And it doesn't mean that because you have friends and family and everything you become poorer or something like that. It's just, I don't know, like
I think I am achieving my goals, but it's not. It's like what you say. I mean, I said this a couple of weeks ago. I made a decision a long time ago. I would not wait until I was a millionaire to help people. So that didn't mean I just helped everybody who came across me or crossed my path. But it didn't mean I lived in poverty either.
Yeah, I am achieving my goals. That's a good answer.
Yeah, I'm achieving. Yeah, well, I think we're achieving our goals. And I think also when I read this book in 1997, I was chasing money. But I had actually already achieved my goal of where I wanted to be working and what I wanted to be doing. And I certainly had the most money I ever had doing that.
That's important too. Doing what you want to do, because ultimately that's what people want money for. It's not the money. They don't want to stack it on the shelf just to have it. They want what the money can get for them. And a financial goal will always increase. Once you get to a certain amount, you may want more, but it's not what the money is, it's what you can get with it. So I agree 100% with what you're saying. You're successful the moment that you're actually doing what makes you happy.
When did you recognize that? At which point you recognize that you work in the best work you want, you get the best money you get? When came the realization that I am in the best time of my life right now, right here?
I was having the best time of my life, and in fact, the irony is that 10 months later, my friend gave me a copy of Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And I read it that year for the first time. And reading it, I had realized I had arrived at that place doing everything in the book. And it gave me the confidence to think, well, I have done everything like this already once. I can duplicate this for anything I want. And if you I don't know, if you look at my LinkedIn and things that I've done and things that I've achieved and where I've done it and with what people, is just me duplicating everything in the book for different fields, different types of work, different types of pastime or hobby, and always rising to the top of it until I don't need to do that anymore. The one of the things, the reason I keep coming back to this webinar every Monday night is because now we're all older and mature and know that you don't go and chase money. You let money be attracted to you. And in fact, you can achieve that not by chasing money, but by chasing people, getting the people to be your mastermind group, not chasing them, but finding them and including them. And I consider this a mastermind group. On Monday mornings, when my kids go back to school and my wife goes to wherever she's going, I sit down and I read the chapter of the book that we're going to discuss that night. And I call that my like sharpening the saw day, having a break before the rest of the week starts, because my week doesn't start until 7 p.m. on a Monday night or whatever time it is where Gregory is.
Right. Firstly, I want to welcome Paul. Hey, Paul, how you going? Let's see if we can hear you. Do you want to just say hi to us? I've got you on mute.
Hi, everyone. How you going?
Hey, Paul, how you
Good to
going?
see you again, Paul.
Hi, Adrian.
All right, so
Hi, Anna. Hi, Greg.
Hello.
So we're just talking about persistence, Paul, and
Yep.
I might just loop you in quickly. Now, when it comes to persistence, what's your take on persistence?
Sticking with it for the long term, so not giving up. Yes, that's been some interesting things. That's very, very relevant at the moment. So it's an appropriate chapter that we're looking at.
We were also tying persistence with faith and belief.
Yeah, it does tie in with that, but it's more like the grit and keeping going. And I guess persistence is one thing that actually outdoes talent. So you can have talent, but if you're more persistent, you can actually overtake someone with talent as well. I've seen it actually happen with people. I mean, let's take professional dancing as an example. One of my previous partners, her daughter was naturally talented as a ballet dancer, but she was lazy. So in the early times, she did really well, but she didn't put the effort in. And then it's sort of the realization hit her after me telling her, and her mum wasn't happy, but the people that were actually putting in the work, they were starting to actually overtake her. And so what eventually she realized that if she put in the work with it, with her talent, she was going to stay well above them. and that's actually what happened. But
that is so true,
partially
Paul.
persistence as well.
Yeah, that is so true, because in my life, when I grew up, I had a younger brother than me who we did judo as a sport. And my younger brother was much more aggressive. He was much better than me. And he used to beat me. But he was the one that quit judo, and I'm the one that stayed on and did judo until I was in my 20s. But I was the one that got to represent Australian judo, whereas my brother didn't. And that was all just pure persistence. Yeah. So, now he talks about some, he's actually got 16 symptoms of the lack of persistence. And I won't go through them all, but the last one is the fear of criticism. And what he says here is that people permit relatives, friends, and the public at large to influence them, that they cannot live their lives because they fear criticism. Criticism in marriage, in belated education, relatives wrecking lives in the name of duty, take chances in business for fear of failure. Napoleon Hill, when offered the assignment by Andrew Carnegie to do these principles and write this book, that first thing that popped into his mind was his fear of criticism. What was his family going to think? Actually, he tells us what his family thinks. His brother turned around and thought he was nuts. Well, so what is it about the fear of criticism that is the biggest influence that stops us or cuts off this persistence?
Well, part of it is the belonging thing, Paul. And as you know from the coaching stuff that we've done, you can never have a better experience than what your parents have had. So if you're going to be more successful, you don't sort of belong to the family system anymore. So that's part of it. But I mean, family are also the most critical, and they do it for misguided reasons. It's actually out of a place of love where they don't want you to be hurt or to fail. So they'd rather say, just don't do it, but in a way that it's counterproductive to what you actually want to do.
Absolutely. I mean, there's so many people that end up getting married to the wrong person because out of duty for their family and friends. I know that in my life, my previous girlfriend was of Indian origin, and her parents ended up in an arranged marriage. And so there is a lot of criticism out there, fear of criticism. Adrian, what did you want to add to that?
I was going to add, I'll just remind you the chapter. I mean, most people, they do fear being persistent because they're getting the feedback from around them that they're being cold-hearted and ruthless, or being perceived that way. That's the biggest fear, because that classes them then as a bad person. Could be amongst their peers, could be amongst their neighbors, certainly their family. It's not just isolated to family though, or your spouse or partner or girlfriend. It could be even people you don't know. So they could be fearing what the newspaper is going to say about them taking that action. Or their customers that they don't know, prospects, or future customers that they haven't met before. That could also be holding them back, and they're second guessing what people they don't even know are going to say. That holds people back a lot of the time. You see them obsessing over their written copy for marketing materials or emails or messages they want to send to them or have on their website, because they're trying to have words that appeal to everybody without offending anyone.
Anna, did you want to add something? I thought I saw you put your hand up.
Yeah, I was just thinking it's an interesting perspective that people fear to be seen as cold-hearted or like ruthless or something. It really depends, because sometimes you need cold-hearted and ruthless person to do the job.
Tough love, right? Sometimes it needs to be tough love.
Yeah, it's
I love your
yeah.
perspective, Anna. You always come up with these gems.
You are so controversial. That's
Before
why.
before saying that, I actually thought about that. I was thinking for a second, how about I will be agreeable for a moment, and then I said that I was like, no.
Yeah, we don't want you to join anymore if you're agreeable. We need a devil's advocate. We need someone to shine a light on that, because it's not all optimism. Even in the whole book, he talks about all these things. You are going to go into dark places with it, but he shows you how to get out of it. And nearly all of them means finding more information or finding someone with more information, because there is always a way.
And it's interesting you say that, because he actually gives us the 4 steps to cultivate or to develop persistence. He actually gives us, he says persistence is a state of mind, so you can cultivate it. And he gives us 7 ways to cultivate it, like definiteness of purpose, desire, self-reliance, a definite of purpose again. I must have read that written that one down twice. Accurate knowledge, cooperation, willpower, and habit. And then later on in the book, he goes on to give us the 4 steps that we can develop. It's again, definite purpose backed by a burning desire for its fulfillment, a definite plan expressed in a continuous action, a mind closed against all negative and encouraging influences, and 4, a friendly alliance with one or more person for encouragement. And these 4 steps lead to control of one's economic destiny, freedom and independence of thought, riches, power, fame, and recognition, and favorable breaks. So, and then it goes on, the entire purpose of the 13 principles of this philosophy in the book Think and Grow Rich is to make these 4 steps as a matter of habit. So I think this it's an interesting statement. I think it needs more discussion. Who wants to give us their take on these 4 steps that he was talking about? Adrian's going to read the book. Come on, Gregory, while Adrian's reading the book.
No, I just want to refresh the 4 steps that he's talking about.
Right, the 4 steps: definite purpose, a definite plan, a closed mind, and a friendly alliance.
These are all things, when I've done it in the past, people have thought I was cold-hearted and ruthless because I was ignoring them and I was focused on what I was going to do, and I was trying to channel infinite intelligence, and, you want to love the world and everything. And people are saying, oh, I got bills to pay. I don't have the luxury of believing things are possible unless I see them. You're just constantly surrounded by 95% of the population that are not on that level. But that's okay. That's okay. Everyone's on a different journey, and they're on a different part of the journey. And sometimes it's unavoidable because they're a different age. So it's impossible for someone who's 22 to be thinking like a 55-year-old, because they haven't made that journey yet.
Yes, Paul.
Yeah, with the cold-heartedness, he did actually address that in the book. So what people perceive as cold-heartedness can sometimes be just the focus in getting the things done. So I think it's what I'm sort of taking from that is it just needs to reframe in terms of how you perceive it to be. And that cold-heartedness is a perception. It's not a reality. It might be their reality, that it's not actually maybe who we are or the people are that we're working with and things like that. If you've got an aim in mind, you're working really hard towards it at times. And in the last couple of weeks, I've been really close to giving up on what I'm doing. But there you go, I'm sharing that with you as a group, but it's been really hard and I've been struggling with it at times.
One of the things I like to say to encourage people is that diamonds are made under extreme pressure. And I know you're going through extreme pressure, Paul, but there's a diamond that's going to pop out so long as you continue to persist.
Yeah.
Can I ask something? Like
Yes.
I kind of feel quite a bit of pain, but I'm thinking in the situation we've just discussed actually that before you joined, what happens when you're like about to give up, when you lacking the desire, and we've just discussed that if you're lacking the desire, maybe reconsider. Are you like I'm probably on the wrong path of asking that, but I'm just it might be a good time to sit in the quiet place and just meditate, breathe, and think, what does Paul want?
Yeah, I think the desire is still there, but there's a whole bunch of things
Then it will come.
Yeah, that are just making some things hard in terms of, warehousing, pricing. So I'm looking at options now that are smaller and cheaper. They're not ideal, and it's going to make any expansion or perhaps even the start off a little bit harder. But talking to Paul earlier on, I just need to maybe do it and get some income in and go from there.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about this afterwards, but Chris, who I accidentally met, who knows you on Friday, was very eager to have one of your flight simulators in their premises for people to use, and they would, you could actually make them pay. You could do it like a franchise, a little bit by machine. But we can talk about that later. But there's lots of options for your business.
Yeah, I actually spoke to Chris last Friday, just after I got the message. We did actually connect for a while. He had another meeting to go to. He doesn't actually know me. He got my name confused with somebody else, but that's fine. We still connected.
And you are both pilots. Like that was the amazing thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So we are going to reconnect. I'm going to try and get down and actually have a chat with him and things. He's got a business partner in Perth that does similar to what I'm doing. So in some ways, he could be a competition. I've got to work out how that would look and what it might be. But I'm going to have a discussion with him and see from there.
Yeah, and I think that's a good example, Paul, just to bring it back to what we're talking about tonight, persistence. It's a shame Angelica's not here, because one of the things she tries to do in everything is just ease, not push, but ease and let things flow. She's all about like just ease it, not push it, just ease it and then let it flow. And I'm a great believer in, sometimes life is what happens to you when you're busy making other plans. And I was talking to this guy, Chris, on Friday, and he was talking about how he used to be a pilot and he could do flight simulator, and then your name came up and he says, I think I know him. And then I said, well, here's his phone number, call him. And that's life happening when you're busy making other plans. So Anna is right too. Sometimes you go away and go to a quiet place and think, should I continue? Or even better, should I continue the way I'm continuing? Should I continue a different way? Can I achieve this goal a different way? And that's where analogies like there's more than one way to skin a cat. That's where perception comes into it. Are you looking at a cylinder, or are you looking at it from the left and it's just a rectangle. It depends where the light is. It depends where you are. And, I always reminded of that Abraham Lincoln quote, walking into a party and seeing that man over on the other side of the room and saying, I really hate that man. I must get to know him better. Sometimes you need to know the problem you're solving better. You need to look at it from the customer's point of view, the supplier's point of view, the competitor's point of view. You just need to take a different perspective on it, and as wide as possible and big picture, because that's where you get frustrated. We get frustrated when we're in a corner, and a corner is where you're doing the detail, not the big picture.
Yeah. It was interesting what Anna was talking about. In terms of working out at what stage you reassess and decide maybe it's not the right ladder you're climbing at the time type thing. That's a bit of an analogy. But at what stage it's not necessarily a lack of persistence, but it's realizing that maybe there's something different, or, because there's also opportunity costs in terms of going with something. And this has taken way longer than I thought it was going to take as well. And that's probably been why there's been a bit of a reassessment as well. I still want to do it. Real estate's more expensive than what I thought. And it feels like it's just all consuming at the moment. I'm probably taking a bit more time off and away from it than I should. But I've also told Paul, I've also moved from where I was as well. So I'm a lot further away from the simulators and the warehouse and stuff like that. And that was, that decision wasn't taken lightly, but I couldn't afford to rent where I was anymore. It went up 20% last year. This is my own place I was renting. And then went up 20% this year. And, it was just crazy to stay. So I put it off last year, and this year I thought, no, I've got to do it. So a couple of weeks and I was out. Which in a lot of ways took some other pressure off, but created other pressures and differences as well.
Yeah, that's right, Paul. And kind of what Adrian was saying and what you might be going through, it's kind of like the story earlier in the book about Barnes, who wanted to go into business with Edison. And he turned up at the door and said, I'm going to go into business with you. And for I think it was 3 or 4 years, he was just a clerk until the opportunity came in the talking machine where all the other salespeople thought it was a stupid idea. And Barnes took that idea and ran with it. And that was his opportunity to get his big break and then go into business with Thomas Edison, the greatest inventor of the world. But he didn't think that was the way I was going to do. All he had was in his mind this desire to go into business with Thomas Edison, not work with him. And that kept his mind open for all of these opportunities. And I think that, if you've got an open mind with those flight simulators that you have, you're going to have plenty and plenty of opportunities come. You just got to have an open mind. And it might not be the way you think it's going to turn out, or it might be. We don't know. You just got to persist, have the open mind, and kind of like back yourself.
Yeah. Can I just share something that happened during the week, Paul? Is that okay?
Sure.
It is to do with persistence. I've been chasing another company to do, it's not so much a partnership, but to use their simulator. And I've been chasing it for 2 years. And last week, they actually agreed to me using it at the rate that I wanted, and to start in 2 weeks. And they said, we'll just invoice if you want to do something, and we'll get the contract signed later. This is a $22 million full flight simulator for a helicopter. So, it's high end, and it's been 2 years working in the background, reconnecting. There's been times where it's taken months between responses, and I've just been really patient with it. Also, I didn't want to tell too many people about it because other people would try to get in. I've lost some opportunities before where I've shared it with people that have been doing similar things. And this one, I've just sort of sat on it. And I sort of took a bit of a gamble. And I didn't have it in place at the time. There's an air show actually starting tomorrow down in Melbourne. It's Avalon, which is the biggest in the Southern Hemisphere. It runs for about some 5-6 days. And I put an advertisement in the trade show magazine that's going to be distributed, and advertise actually a helicopter simulator in there as well. So, that's from a couple of different chapters of the book with perseverance and things, and sort of putting it out there. But so the ad actually came out on last Tuesday, and this only happened on Thursday or Friday, actually. Friday afternoon it might have been. So there you go.
Congratulations, and sometimes it never rains but it pours.
Yeah, I'm hoping it's the start of the rain.
Why don't you send us a copy of that ad and like a coupon code or something, and we can just I think what you have is very attractive to people. If we just told everybody we know on Facebook, they could get a discount on something and go and fly something at your simulation place, that you'd get customers automatically.
Yeah. Well, the good thing is somebody suggested putting a QR code on the bottom, which I did. And I'm aware of what they were and hadn't ever thought of it. Link straight into the website on the phone, done. It works really well. So I was pleased with that. But also, I'm hoping to move to another warehouse. I'm looking at another one on Thursday that I saw last week. So I'm having a second look at it. So I'm hoping that by the end of March, I'll actually be in a new warehouse. So I'm sort of taking a gamble and a punt on it. But it's at the stage where I need to, otherwise it's not going to happen as well. So.
Actually, you've got everything else set up. It's just the location is the problem. And I'm not overly religious, but I'm reminded of a pregnant couple about 2,000 years ago couldn't find a place, and you can still have miracles wherever, right? You just have faith. You can do it anywhere, and it will come. Someone will. I think Paul had a friend that said just before we started doing this. In fact, was he didn't like where he was living.
Oh, Phil.
And then he mentioned it to somebody, and then he let him live there. Now, what you have to do is, instead of saying it's a bad thing about the business, just tell people what you want. You want a warehouse, and how big. Tell everybody so that someone can say, hey, I've got a warehouse. How much does he want to pay? And I guarantee it'll be less than the prices you're seeing through the advertised real estate, whether it's on the net or whatever. It has to be through a network. Someone who wants to make a bit of cash to get an idle venue working and generating cash.
Yeah, what's been a few
the other
weeks
thing
since
you can do, Paul, I won't get back on target, but the other thing that you can think about doing is join the Business Chamber of Commerce in Alexandria, and you might find something there as well.
Yeah. Okay.
You never know. But I want to get back. I want to finish with this.
On Gumtree as well.
Gumtree,
I've done that actually, and to share a place as well.
So
yeah.
So what I want to do is I just want to finish because it's top of the hour already. But this last little thing, he talks about the magical power of persistence. Does the quality of persistence set up in one's mind some form of spiritual, mental, or chemical activity which gives one access to supernatural forces? Does infinite intelligence throw itself on the side of a person who fights on after the battle has been lost, with the whole world on the opposing side? And Paul, I think you're going through that right now. I think you're feeling a lot of that right now. But what is this mystical power that he's talking about? Gregory, come on. I haven't heard from you for a while. Oh, you're on pause.
You,
Didn't realize I was muted. Again, I think the biggest power behind persistence is how bad do you want what you're after? It's the reasons that it says that people fail with persistence, like the fear of criticism is probably one of the biggest ones. Is you got to want what you're after more than you want people's approval. When the Wright brothers built the plane, everybody they knew ridiculed them. Their father was a preacher and told them they were going to go to hell, but they did it anyway. Now people are flying everywhere. If they'd listened to that, none of that would have happened. So if you want something more than you want anything else, it's a true burning desire, then I think persistence is going to come as natural as breathing. You may still have some obstacles, but you're never going to give up on it because you want it so bad. I think that's the main element. You have to want something bad enough, and if you do, you're going to persist.
And Anna, what do you have to add to that? I know you're on. I've got to mute.
Here you go. Sorry. I was trying to unmute myself. I absolutely agree with Gregory. I think Gregory is on fire today. Like everything, like I wrote down pretty much everything what he said. That's a burning desire. Like if you really want something, then there is no obstacles. The obstacles are just perception. Like just as long as you don't concentrate on them, right? Just make sure that you pick yourself. You notice that the way how you speak and the way how you think, that you don't concentrate, that you don't magnify something which doesn't need to be magnified, and you can put your attention to magnify something else. It's exactly what Paul was just saying. So he said one thing, which is the rent is hurting, this is hurting, right? Like, what am I going to do? And in the next 2 minutes, he said, fantastic story. Paul, you said just fantastic story that you're just like bloody winner of the month. Like, really cool. So that's why we all need to put the magnifying glass. That thing will sort out itself. It will. Like, whether you like it, you don't like it, it's just going to happen. That you just don't forget to enjoy what you achieve as well. Because it's a pretty bloody cool thing.
Well said. And I think one of the books actually called Think and Grow Rich, and it's really the thought that you send out is what you get, and it's called the law of attraction. The thought that you send out is the thought that comes back. Before we go, does anybody have any closing thoughts?
if
Yes,
you can't find it and chase it, bait the hook so that you can attract it.
Paul,
I just honestly say I think he will find the location to put those flight simulators from someone who offers you the space. So you've got to tell everybody that you're looking for a space rather than seeing what's available, because someone's going to show you the perfect warehouse for those 6 machines, and you would not have seen it anywhere. It's only with this person saying, tell him to call me because I've been looking for a way to use this space where I used to have like my 3 boats that I can't afford anymore. And you could have your flight simulation machines in some old garage for like yachts that's on the harbor, and people are going to be flying those planes. But when they get out of the cockpit, they're looking at Sydney Harbor. It's going to be something more amazing in location that you can ever have dreamed of or looked at. I tell you
If
that
you,
for a fact.
if you drop the fears, don't magnify them unnecessarily.
Yeah. Just know that it's going to happen. You've got everything else set up. Why won't there be a venue? People arrange events without knowing where the venue's going to be.
And imagine
You know,
it. See it in your
people
mind actually operating out of that new building.
people have to change venue because they've sold too many tickets and they're oversubscribed. You know, location is just one thing, and it doesn't have to be your forever location. People will be begging for you to be their tenant because they know you're making so much money. They want to have you there. You have to have that mentality.
Yeah. What I've got to be
I
mindful
will
of.
put a request out. Just tell me, what's the square meters you need?
250 plus would be ideal.
Okay, 250 square meters. I will put it out, and I'll say that, and I'll let you know. Okay, I've got your phone number.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, yes, Paul.
Yeah, a couple of things. So, I mean, getting tied into the length of a lease is a concern. Where they're wanting a long lease, I'd rather take a shorter one potentially. So if I need to expand and it's small, then I'm not tied into it. But something else they talked about in the chapter this week was about, I can't remember what they called it, like a mentor group, and something else was talking about.
Mastermind.
Sorry?
It's called. It's actually. It's a
Mastermind.
perfect segment because next chapter is actually called "The Power of the Mastermind."
Yeah, because it was mentioned in this one as well, and also in an earlier one.
Yeah.
So I guess I'd like to call on you four to be part of my mastermind about the business as well, please.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're all here backing you 100%, and
thank you.
No, you've got a lot of great suggestions. I know that Adrian and Anna have already visited you. I know that if Gregory's truck could swim, he would have come and visited you as well. And
okay, send me an invitation to remind me.
Yeah, I come to the expo on Saturday because I also have some business people that need help in understanding how to see the wood despite the trees and getting new business and customers. So let's do it all together over a beer and lunch.
Well, I'll see you on Saturday, Paul. You're close. Yep. Hopefully you can make it. And are you still on holiday, or are you back from your holiday?
It wasn't on holiday. It was just work.
You were working.
But yeah, I'm here. I'm here. What's the expo about?
So what we'll do, I'll just sign off, and then once we sign off, then Adrian can explain it to all of us. But I just want to thank everybody for turning up today. Paul and Anna, it's great to see you back. I know there's been a few people that, for Nicolette, it was a birthday, Alison studying. So a lot of things happen. So it's great to see both of you back. And next week, Paul, this is the one that you really need to study up on. It's called The Power of the Mastermind. And you've asked us to be all a part of your mastermind, and we will be, because we're all here to support you.
Thank you.
So until next week, thank everybody. Let me just stop recording.
Thank you for doing this, Paul.